Hey everyone, it's Mr. Norton with another lesson on economics, and we're going to focus on economic systems today. So the first thing you want to go ahead and make sure that you have an understanding of is you understand what an economic system is. And basically when we talk about economic systems, we're talking about specifically how communities or nations answer those three questions that scarcity leads to. And so that's basically they're deciding how are they going to take their scarce resources and satisfy their unlimited wants and their needs. Okay, so the three questions, if you don't remember what they are, it's what should be produced, how should it be produced, and for whom will it be produced. Now, each of these economic systems that we cover will have specific answers, very easy to remember on how to actually respond to those. Now, in our lesson today, we're only going to focus on two of the economic systems. And that's going to be traditional and command, but there are four. The thing that I really want to make sure that we stress right now is that there are no examples in modern day of the first three that are listed. Everything is considered mixed. Now that doesn't mean that everything is the same as far as mixed. You'll see some countries that are referred to as, like China is referred to as communist China, and communism is normally implied to be command. Well, it is, but they're not completely command, okay? So those countries don't exist anymore. United States is oftentimes thought of as a purely market economic system, but it's not. It's actually mixed. You have aspects of traditional, you have aspects of command, and you have aspects of market in there. So really, as far as we look at economic systems of countries as a whole, the answer is they're all mixed, but what type of mix they have is completely different from nation to nation. Let's get into our first one. We're going to talk about a traditional economic system. Basically, the three questions that are asked that we just referenced earlier all have one answer: whatever ensures survival. That means that your individual desires and whatever it is you want to achieve in life, whatever job you want to have, it doesn't matter. It's all based on tradition, and that's the answer. How do we solve these things? Well, it's just we've been surviving all these years based on doing these activities, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue to do what tradition has told us. Now, there are some positives and some negatives associated with that. Like, for instance, since everything's based on survival, whatever decisions you come up with, people are going to survive. Methods of production remain consistent over the years and over the generations, so we don't have to learn new things as a people. It's easy to just hand those traditions down from generation to generation. There's little to no disagreement because the answer should be whatever ensures survival. Of course, some disagreement could be, is the decision we're making actually what guarantees survival? The other nice thing is that everyone knows their role. Typically, men continue to do the same roles they've always done. Women continue to do the same things that they've always done. So I know what you're thinking too. If you're a lady, this doesn't sound very appealing. Well, I can understand that. Some negatives, clearly it's probably going to be inefficient because if I'm using techniques that great-great-great-grandpa did to, make whatever it is that they make, well, pretty sure there's this crazy thing called technology, and that we could go ahead and use that to be more efficient. But in traditional economic systems, we don't necessarily do that. Now, when we get into the mixed economic systems with, like, the United States, it's not that we're using the same equipment, it's that you might see on a farm, like, well, we've always raised cows, so we're going to continue to raise cows, or we've always grown wheat, so we're going to continue to grow wheat, because that's tradition. But that's about the extent as we see inside of the United States with traditional economic systems. It's very rare. It doesn't allow for specialization. That's going to be another negative. So if you're not familiar with specialization is, it basically allows for people to do what they're best at. Like, if it had been my family's role to always work on cars, I'm stretching on this one, okay? I'm terrible, I don't know anything about cars other than how to change a tire and put gas in, put oil in, put windshield wiper fluid, and outside of that, I gotta take it to a shop. Okay, so I'm not very good at those things. I'm very good at other things. I haven't shot a gun since I was like 10, like a real gun. BB guns don't count, okay? And so if you think I'm gonna be the hunter that goes ahead and supplies the food for everyone, probably going to starve. Okay. Other negatives too is that typically of the three economic systems that we're going to focus on that are standalones, this has the lowest standard of living. So you'll survive, but you're not going to really like what you live in. You're not going to like the environment you're in. And so it's not very appealing to people. So where are these type of economic systems in pure form? As we said before, they don't really exist as far as a country is concerned. You might find them in local communities around the globe. They may function like that. You may find like some tribe deep in the Amazon rainforest that still functions in this manner. But when we're talking about a country as a whole, tradition is not the most influential one. It's really the other two. Okay, so command economic systems is the second one we're focusing on in this video lesson today. Some of the things that we also want to refer to is that when we talk about a command system, command economic system, they also refer to that as a centrally planned economy. And if you don't know where that comes from, that's because the central government is the one making all the decisions for you. So that would be a national government if you're not familiar with the term central government. A lot of people compare a command economic system to the Soviet Union. Now keep in mind, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. That's why when we talked earlier about, hey, what are some modern day examples of command economic systems? Again, it doesn't exist. We do see areas like China, which is considered communist. They do have a lot of command economic systems involved, but they do allow for some privatization, so they're a mixed one. So some other things to be mindful of is socialism and communism are associated with command economic systems. So if you don't know what communism and socialism is, well, here we go. The socialism is the government owns part or some of the factors of production. So some countries are considered having socialist tendencies when we talk about who owns the factors of production. We look at some European countries like France. There is some socialism involved because they own some of the utilities that are involved, but you would not say that they are necessarily a socialist country. So communism is a more extreme version of socialism. Basically, there's no private ownership whatsoever, not at all. No, okay, the government owns absolutely everything. Who's the entrepreneurs? It's the government. Who controls the labor? Government. Who controls the land, the natural resources? Government. Who controls the capital? The government. So when we looked at the first one with traditional economic systems, and we're like, well, how are the three questions answered? It was whatever ensures survival, whatever ensures survival, whatever ensures survival were the three answers to the economic questions that scarcity leads to. Well, in command economic systems, the answer becomes whatever the government tells you to do, whatever the government tells you to do, whatever the government tells you to do. If the government says this is what's going to be made, that's what's made. If the government says this is how it's going to be made, that's how it's going to be made. If the government says these are the people who are going to get those goods and services, then these are the goods of people that get those goods and services. Now it says authoritarian. It says, what does authoritarian mean on my screen? Okay, basically it means you have to submit entirely to the will of the state. Karl Marx basically thought that you should overthrow the government, like completely destroy it, and then create it with his version of government where everyone's supposed to be equals. You can make your judgments reading your history books on whether that was actually achieved. His idea was you needed a classless society. Everybody should be the same class, and therefore everybody should be equal. And that kind of leads us into some of these memes I've got going on here. Like it says, when the CEO asks what happened to all his means of production. Well, if we're talking about Marx, Marx would come in, smash the government, and then he would go ahead and control everything. And so if you're a private ownership, well, you don't have any more private ownership. You don't own the company. The government owns the company, and that's where you're like, where's my means of production? And if you don't know any better, that's Lenin, who was the first leader of the communist Russia, the Soviet Union. So that's kind of the joke there. I didn't mean to include the stuff to the right of it. It just came with it. Then it says, get in, losers, we're seizing the means of production. Well, that's because in communism, that's what they do. In a command economic system, that's what they do, is they seize the means of production. Sharing is caring. It's a good one, too, because everybody should share everything in the ideas of Marx. Okay. Communist memes aren't funny unless everyone gets them. Oops, there goes my computer for a moment. Yeah, because in communism, everybody's supposed to get everything. Okay, and that last one says, haha, great post, now go to Gulag. That's because they're very authoritarian, and if you didn't listen to the government, you could have gone to the Gulag, which basically is a death camp prison. So there you have for that. Now, there are some terms that we refer to in the public today. Democratic socialism is one of them. Basically, it's the attempt to achieve socialism not through the means that Karl Marx had pushed for, where you basically overthrow the government. This is where you gradually, as much as you can, influence the government to adopt socialist policies through the democratic process. Some of your American politicians that are elected right now claim to be democratic socialists. Bernie Sanders, where this actual logo is from. I went there and it's talking about what other democratic socialists could you help get elected. Okay, well, so I pulled that from his website. Whatever, if you're interested in that, you can go ahead and go there. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, basically falls in line with Bernie Sanders. She's a giant Bernie Sanders supporter. So, again, she would be the type of person who would be pushing for democratic socialism. And you can draw your own conclusions on what that is. I'm not here to persuade you one way or the other to adopt certain ideologies. Again, modern examples of command economies, see the list below. That's right, there are not any. There are ones that are really super command, but have some hints of traditional and market in them, so they're not really there. What's the closest we have? North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba. China is also in there. China, as Donald Trump would say. Again, they have market tendencies. Actually, the most recent one would be Venezuela in the middle. They were like heavy on market, and then they were like, no, we're going strict command. And if you want to see an interesting way that a society has transitioned, you might want to see what's going on in Venezuela today. Okay, so we're going to finish this off with positives and negatives of command economic systems. Well, they provide for everyone. That's, what their goal is to make sure everybody is equal. At least they attempt to. So there's some advantages to that. Like if you're disabled and can't work, they provide for you. If you are too old where you can't work, like in the United States, we have retirement age, like 65 or older. In a market economy, as we'll learn in another lesson later, you would just kind of be like, hey, sorry you can't work, sucks to be you, haha, you're gonna have to take care of yourself. Well, in a command economic system, they would make sure that they still take care of you. Some of the things that are needed by society but don't necessarily produce a profit. Remember, the goal of businesses is to make profit. Well, they don't get made in that system, but in this one it would. So imagine if you need medicine but it's not turning much of a profit, then you would kind of be dead. Okay, so in the command economic system, they can go ahead and ensure that that's made anyway. So let's get to the negatives too. Government officials don't have a whole lot of knowledge on your local conditions, so you have people who are completely oblivious to what you need and what your circumstances are where you live, and they're making decisions for you. There's little or no motivation for workers because the government decides what your pay is, the government decides what your job is going to be at some point, and you're kind of just locked in. And so when we covered this topic in AP Euro, one of the downfalls of communist Russia was people would just show up drunk to work because, like, you're going to take care of me anyway, so party time, right? I'm going to show up to work drunk, get ripped. Who cares if I break stuff because you're going to take care of me, right? Also, too, like, if I work really hard, I'm a really good worker. Well, the government locked my wages in, so why would I even care? Why would I even try? There's no private property, so there's little efficiency. So again, why do I care if I waste resources? The government's the one paying for them anyways, so it doesn't come out of my pocket. Prices are set below what's considered market value, basically like what it should be worth. And so what that does, that drives up demand, and then what that also has happened is that there's shortages. So if you've ever seen pictures of bread lines, that would be like an example of a shortage. There's a light bulb example in your book too, like they talk about how light bulbs are extremely difficult to buy if you were in communist Russia. And so what people would do is they would take their burnout light bulbs and then steal a regular light bulb from work and put the old burnout one in its place, because the government would replace the light bulb in the factory, but it wouldn't replace the light bulb in your home. So those are some of the things that they would do. So, well, that's going to wrap it up. I kept it almost under 15 minutes. And so we're going to focus on the market economy in the next one. If you've got any questions, send me an email, put the comments below, and hopefully you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time.